Hey everyone, my name is Tim Harlan-Marks. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a conflict mediator and a group facilitator and an equity and belonging trainer. And I'm joined by my colleague Ellie for this video.
Hi everyone, I'm Elli Nagai-Rothe, use she and they pronouns, co-founder of the Ripple Collective and do conflict transformation and generative conflict work with organizations with an equity lens. And I'm delighted to be here with you, Tim, to do some role modeling today.
Thanks, Ellie. Me too. So today we're going to be modeling a style of active listening that we both have found really supportive in our work as facilitators and conflict transformation practitioners, but also just in our own lives, navigating conflicts, disagreements, showing up as a source of support for a friend or a colleague who's going through a challenging time. And you're going to see in this role play a mixture of what we could consider to be two types of listening skills. One of them we call reflective listening. And reflective listening is listening to what someone is saying, describing about their experience, saying what happened, saying about what they're going through, and reflecting it back. As much as possible, trying to be a mirror, just reflecting back the words they're using and not adding your own interpretations, meaning making, extrapolating beyond what they shared with you. And then the other style of listening we call empathic listening. And empathic listening is really tuning into the emotional experience of of the person as they're sharing. You might hear feeling words, you might pick up their emotion from how they're sharing and saying it back to them. Ellie, anything you'd want to add to just an overview of these two skills?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, here comes our role play. Oh God. Oh, I just came back from like another awful meeting. Just feel really frustrated. It feels like this team that I'm on, I can't get a word in. I can't get them to hear what I have to say. Like I came into this organization with so many ideas, so much to offer, and I feel like it's not even getting seen. Like if I raise my hand, like no one notices me. If I say an idea, it's like no one heard it, and then someone else says it, and then that time it gets heard. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. This just sounds really frustrating. It sounds incredibly frustrating. Um, I'm hearing, like, I know you've arrived in this space with so many great ideas and so much that you want to contribute and offer, and are really wanting to show up and be seen for your great ideas and what you're wanting to support this organization. And that when you're in those team meetings, it sounds so incredibly frustrating when you're physically not seen raising your hand, but also your voice isn't heard. And I heard you say that in addition, like some of your colleagues are saying the same thing and are getting heard for the
Yes.
same ideas, which is really, really yeah, just so frustrating and infuriating probably. Um, yeah, and I'm hearing like you don't at this point not sure what to do. Like it sounds like it's happened multiple times to the point where feeling really I don't know, maybe sad about it, like just disappointed and frustrated, and kind of lost about what to do next. Was that right? Did I capture that right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, part of me is frustrated, but like, I think right now I mostly just feel really disappointed. Like, I thought
Mhm.
this was going to be something that it's not, or like, I don't know. I'm here because I have a sense of purpose, but I don't feel like I'm living it right now. And, to be honest, like, I feel like sometimes I really doubt myself after a meeting. Like, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Um, yeah, I just don't know. I mean, you mostly got it. I just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. I mean, it definitely makes sense to me that knowing who you are and like the you join this organization because you care about the work that we do and the mission that we have, that you really deeply care about this work and want to do your best to bring that forward and have so many ideas around that. And so it sounds like it's really disappointing because that's why you're here. And so not being able to live into that
Yeah.
feels like you're out of alignment with what you want to be doing. And so, and I'm also hearing like it calls into question your sense of sense of being of like, why am I here? What am I doing? And doubting yourself, um, which is also really a hard and disappointing feeling to have from a space that I know you want to be aligned with in terms of the work that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate you hearing me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that with me, Tim.
Okay, great. So that was our role play, and we thought we just would have a short conversation to talk about tips, things that have helped us as we've cultivated these skills. And again, as you saw in the video, they're not really distinct in practice. They blend together very well, very naturally, and it can be helpful for the sake of practice and learning to talk about them as distinct skills. So we'll talk about some tips for empathic listening and for some tips for reflective listening as well. So, Ellie, what are some tips that you'd want to share about empathic listening?
Yeah. Well, as you said, Tim, like in many ways in the practice that I do, they get blended together quite often. And so in the role play, that's what you saw me doing quite a bit of the blending. But for empathic listening specifically, I'm listening for feeling, so actual feeling words. And so in this case, you started by saying, I'm feeling really frustrated. So going there, but also really paying attention to maybe you're not saying feeling words, but I can tell by your body language or your tone or the volume of your voice, which are the things that are indicating to me what's happening in your inner landscape, in your inner world around your emotional landscape. And so I would make some guesses, or it sounds like you're feeling X, Y, or Z. And focusing, like really staying with that emotion. And sometimes I would even like really create a lot more space, some breath around it if there's like some really tender pieces that are coming forward, just to make some space for that. And as well as I didn't do so much of this in the role play, but empathic listening for me is also allowing myself to be impacted um, by your experience. And so reflecting back what I'm hearing you say, but also being with you in it. I feel impacted. In this case, I might have felt impacted as your colleague being in this organization. I'm like, wow, I'm really disappointed too. Like, this is not what I want for your experience. That's not what I want from my experience.
Mm,
And that can feel really supportive, especially in a role play like this, where there are two colleagues who have a relationship with each other.
I love that, Ellie. Yeah, really great.
Yeah. So what about for you, Tim? What are some tips that you have around reflective listening or either one, empathic or reflective listening?
Yeah. I appreciate that. I think you covered most of the things. I guess there's one thing I would add about empathic listening, and it's a little tricky, but I notice when someone is sharing something vulnerable, it can be a real relief to know that they're not the only person who's felt that way.
Hmm.
So you want to walk a line. You don't want to just take over the conversation and make it all about you, but it can be helpful to say something like, "Oh wow, like I totally know what that's like. Like I second guess myself too in those moments," or "What a normal reaction," or something like that. I find that that can support someone going further into their vulnerability.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, in terms of reflective listening, yeah, some simple tips I find really helpful are to use the person's words as much as possible, which can be tricky when they say a lot. So the something that I know you and I have talked about before, but really paying attention to where the person is placing the most emphasis, where they have the kind of the biggest sigh or the biggest body language, or they raise their voice, or maybe there's a word they keep repeating. All of these are signs that someone is speaking to something that's personally important to them. So, to the best of my ability, I try to reflect back those things first and foremost. And then as I'm reflecting back, I also am watching for body language, size, tone of voice, because that gives me a sense of when I'm honing in on what's most alive, what's most important for the other person. I find when I do that, I notice people's kind of blood temperature. I guess I don't know their actually blood temperature. I guess what I'm saying is I can feel their energy lessen. They can get a little more comfortable. They spread out, and they often share more. Like you saw that in the role play. When you reflect back what someone's saying, it invites them into a deeper relationship with their own experience, and they often will share more than they originally did. Maybe more than they felt comfortable sharing before they heard you reflecting back. And the last thing I would say is
Yeah.
that, oh, sorry, were you going to add something, Ellie?
Yeah, Tim, I just wanted to build on what you were sharing about when we're reflecting back, that can oftentimes invite people to share more. Absolutely, that happens. And it can also be really helpful in allowing folks to get more clarity about their experience or to deepen or expand,
Yeah.
maybe more so than they had imagined or had first thought of when they started sharing. So that can also be really supportive.
Yeah, so real. I find that to be really true when I'm getting listened to by somebody who's really attuned to my experience. Like the in the swirl of things, it isn't as clear as it is when I'm parsing it out in dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
The one last thing I wanted to add is just an acknowledgement. We talk about how this tool can be so supportive when you're in an interpersonal disagreement or conflict, and it's really hard. It's really hard in the moment. I've heard someone describe this practice to me as stomach work, meaning like, ugh, it takes your gut, it takes that certain quality of courage from your gut to step into someone else's reality in the heat of the moment. So just wanted to speak to some things that can be supportive in that moment. One thing I find for myself is to pause, take a deep breath, do whatever I can just to resource myself and acknowledge to myself that it is challenging. It's not my problem. It's not my personal problem that it's hard. And sometimes I find it supportive just to quietly, internally, don't have to say it out loud, but just to acknowledge to myself that even though I'm stepping into someone else's reality, I'm not going to give up on my needs, on my experience. It's just a temporary stepping across the line. There's a part of me that sometimes can get defensive, like if I listen deeply to someone else's experience, if I legitimize it as real, that I'm going to give up on myself or I'm not going to be heard and I'm not going to be acknowledged. So it can be helpful just to give myself that reassurance before I take that step toward the other person.
Yeah, I think that's so real, Tim. Thanks for naming that. Because that can absolutely happen. Does happen to I'll speak for myself, happens to me all the time. But also like with the folks that we work with, there's like having to being able to trust that um extending the offering, it's really an offering to listen and understand someone else's experience when it's so different, especially when it's so different from our own, and to trust that our that doesn't mean we're giving up on our own experience, our own needs, our own ability to be heard around those. But to practice that in the moment, definitely takes practice and a trust. So I really appreciate you bringing that up and giving ourselves some empathy in the moment to be able to do that.
Thanks, Ellie. All right. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching our video on active listening. Hopefully you found some supportive tools here and yeah, wishing you a beautiful day wherever you are.